Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a phenomenon that might just prove the past isn't what you think it is. We're going to explore a pretty wild question. What if your reality, and even your history, is being rewritten right under your nose? I mean, really think about that for a second. We're not talking about you forgetting where you left your keys. We're talking about a specific, detailed memory, a memory that you share with thousands, maybe millions of other people. But what if current reality says that memory never happened? What would that even mean? Well, this is where it all started. When Nelson Mandela died in 2013, something strange happened. A wave of confusion just swept across the internet. Countless people had this crystal clear memory of him dying in prison decades earlier. They remembered the news reports, the funeral on TV, and yet here he was dying for what felt like a second time. This bizarre, shared, false memory is what gave a name to the whole phenomenon, the Mandela Effect. But this is so much more than just a quirky internet thing. For a lot of people, it's a personal and, honestly, a deeply unsettling experience. It feels like finding a crack in the very foundation of reality itself. To give you a sense of just how disorienting this can be, listen to this story. A woman revisited the famous Ufuuna Kannon statue in Japan. She remembered it vividly from her childhood as this towering, full-body figure. But when she got there, she was just shocked. It was only a bust from the chest up. She was so sure it had changed that she actually went and confronted the staff, whom, looked at her like she was crazy. For them, it had always been a bust.
So, okay, let's put an official label on what we're talking about. Because, again, this is not just misremembering something. This is something else entirely.
At its core, yeah, you could call the Mandela Effect a collective misremembering. But here's the crucial part. It's not random. Huge groups of totally unrelated people remember the exact same incorrect detail. It's the sheer consistency of the wrong memory that makes this so baffling. And the examples are literally everywhere, hiding in plain sight. How do you spell that air freshener? So many people remember Febreze with 2 E's, but just go look at the bottle. It says Febreze. And millions of people would swear on a stack of books that Pikachu has a black tip on his tail. Go check. It's always been solid yellow. These aren't just isolated incidents. There are thousands of them out there.
So, what in the world is going on here? The easy mainstream explanation you'll hear from psychology is that it's just a form of collective false memory. Basically, our memories aren't perfect video recordings, they can be influenced by others, and our brain just kind of fills in the gaps with stuff that isn't true. But for the people who actually experience the Mandela effect, that explanation just doesn't feel right. It doesn't explain why so many people are sharing the exact same wrong detail. It leads them to ask, is something else going on?
And this is really where the conversation gets interesting. Because when you start pulling on this thread, you're not just questioning psychology anymore, you're questioning physics. You're forced to confront the absolute fundamentals of our world, things like time, space, and cause and effect, the stuff we just assume is solid and real. Some of the most jarring examples are about our own bodies. Imagine you're a marathon runner, and you instinctively reach for your heart on the left side of your chest, but it's not there. You find it more in the center. And then you discover that every single anatomy chart agrees with this, completely contradicting a lifetime of memories reinforced by, everything. And then there's the globe itself. People describe looking at a world map and just getting this weird sense of vertigo. In their memory, Australia was this isolated continent, way out in the middle of nowhere. But now, it's tucked right up underneath Asia. South America seems to have drifted way out to the east. It feels like the entire planet has been subtly rearranged. And get this effect even seems to be confusing our technology. For instance, tons of people remembered the famous voice actor Nobuo Oyama passing away years before her official death. When you ask different AIs for her date of death, they give you conflicting answers. One says 2023, another 2011. It's almost as if the historical record itself is fractured and confused. Okay, so if it's not just our brains playing tricks on us, what else could it be? Well, there's an alternative theory, one that's rooted in quantum physics. It suggests that reality isn't this fixed, solid thing we think it is. Instead, it's more like a super high-resolution rendering, being updated moment by consciousness itself. So let's look at the difference here. The conventional view, the one we all learn in school, is that time is a straight line. The past is fixed and unchangeable, and reality is just out there, objective. But this other view, sometimes called the zero-point field theory, says that all time actually exists in the now. that the past is totally fluid and rewritable, and that the reality we see is actually being rendered by our consciousness.
Now, this might sound like pure science fiction, but listen, the people who invented quantum theory were already thinking along these lines 100 years ago. Max Planck, literally the father of quantum theory, said that we have to regard consciousness as fundamental, and that matter is just a byproduct of it.
And he wasn't alone. John von Neumann, another giant of physics, took it a step further. He directly linked the observer, you, to the creation of reality. He proposed that it's the very act of you consciously looking at something that causes all the infinite possibilities of the quantum world to collapse into the one single reality we actually experience. Okay, so buckle up, because this is where the theory gets really, really wild. If reality is being rendered by our consciousness in this present moment, it has a startling, absolutely mind-bending implication for what we call the past. So, the past isn't like a movie that's already been shot and stored in a vault somewhere. According to this model, it's more like a script that is being constantly rewritten, on the fly, every single moment, to be consistent with the present reality you are observing right now. Your memory isn't a recording. It's being updated in real time. Here's how that might work in practice. Remember the map changing? In the old reality, where Australia was isolated, the history books said dingoes were brought over by Europeans. But in the new reality, where Australia is right next to Asia, that history just doesn't make sense anymore. So the past gets a rewrite. Now, history books say dingoes were brought from Asia by Aboriginal peoples. The past changed itself to maintain logical consistency with the present. And this rewriting can even affect our most personal stuff. I mean, imagine you took a photograph of a really unique monument. Years later, you look at that same photo on your phone, and the monument is gone. There's just an empty space. Your own proof has been erased, as if it never existed on your timeline to begin with. So, if all of this is even remotely true, if reality is a rendering and the past is fluid, it leads us to a final and pretty empowering conclusion about your role in all of this. So here's the big takeaway. Let's reframe this. The Mandela Effect isn't a bug in the matrix. What if it's a feature? What if it's the seam between different realities becoming visible, and it's proof that you are not just a passive passenger in this universe? Your consciousness, your awareness, is the projector that's choosing which film to play in every single moment. And that leaves us with a really profound question, doesn't it? If the past you thought was set in stone can actually be rewritten, and the reality you thought was solid is actually fluid, then maybe the limits you thought you had are just an illusion. The real question is no longer what happened back then, but what reality will you choose to render right now?